Welcome back to my channel Celebuzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates. We make a special promise, a vow if you will, to live and work in communion with the Holy Father. These words, spoken by every cardinal upon their elevation, echo through the sacred halls of the Vatican. But for Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, they carried a particular weight in the spring of 2025. As the world watched the Sistine Chapel, a question hung in the air as palpable as incense. Would the College of Cardinals elect its first Asian pope in over a millennium? The death of Pope Francis in early 2025 plunged the Catholic Church into a period of mourning and anticipation. For 9 days, the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square, their prayers rising like the morning mist over the Tiber. But as the period of mourning concluded, attention shifted to the Conclave, and to the man many believed would emerge as the 267th successor to St. Peter. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle's papal candidacy wasn't built on mere speculation or wishful thinking. It was grounded in substantial institutional credibility and widespread acclaim. As the pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, effectively the second most powerful position in the Vatican under Francis, Tagle had proven himself a capable administrator, a compassionate pastor, and a magnetic communicator. His journey from modest beginnings in the Philippines to the upper echelons of the Vatican embodied the global vision Pope Francis had championed. Born in Manila in 1957, Tagle's early life was marked by simplicity and devotion. Ordained in 1982, he rose through the ranks not through political maneuvering, but through genuine pastoral skill and theological insight. His doctoral dissertation on episcopal collegiality at the Catholic University of America foreshadowed his inclusive leadership style. Cardinal Cheeto, as he was affectionately known in his homeland, brought an authenticity to his ministry that resonated across cultural divides. His tears during emotional homilies, his willingness to embrace the marginalized, and his humble demeanor on international stages made him not just respected, but beloved. When Pope Francis appointed him to the Vatican in 2019, many saw it as grooming for eventual papal succession. As the cardinals entered the conclave in April 2025, expectations reached a fever pitch. News outlets from CNN to Al Jazeera positioned Tagle as the frontrunner. The Philippines held its collective breath. Catholics across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, representing the Church's demographic center of gravity, found themselves daring to hope for a pope who looked like them, who understood their struggles firsthand. This is not just about nationality, remarked Sister Maria Gonzalez, a Filipino nun working in Vatican City. It's about a vision of the Church that embraces the peripheries, that speaks to the global South. Cardinal Tagle embodies that vision. Bookmakers placed his odds at 3-1, far ahead of European contenders. Vatican observers noted the strategic meetings, the respectful nods in corridors, the way other cardinals sought his counsel in the days before the conclave. Everything pointed to a historic shift in the Church's leadership. And then, the white smoke rose. And everything changed. The Sistine Chapel stood silent, the breath of 133 cardinals barely audible beneath Michelangelo's masterpiece. For 2 days, they prayed, debated, and voted in absolute secrecy. Outside in St. Peter's Square, thousands gathered, eyes fixed on the chimney where smoke would signal their decision. When the white smoke finally billowed forth on the afternoon of April 15, 2025, the crowd erupted in celebration. "Habemus Papam!" they chanted. "We have a pope!" Smartphones captured the moment in real time as billions watched worldwide. But when the new pope stepped onto the balcony, it wasn't Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. The cameramen from Philippine news outlets lowered their equipment in shock. The Filipino faithful in the square stood frozen, flags drooping in suddenly heavy hands. Cardinal Robert Francis Provost of the United States, former prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops, had been elected as Pope Leo XIV. Despite having secured significant support in early balloting, Tagle had not maintained momentum through the conclave's later rounds. While the exact vote counts remain sealed in Vatican archives, reliable sources indicate that by the final ballot, Tagle was not among the top contenders. The news rippled outward from Rome like a stone dropped in still water. In Manila, where giant screens had been erected in plazas and churches, the initial silence was followed by quiet tears and whispered prayers. In the slums of Tondo, where Tagle had once served as a priest, children who had stayed up past midnight to witness history looked to their parents in confusion. Was it betrayal? The question surfaced across social media platforms, in Philippine newspapers, and in hushed conversations among devout Catholics. Had Cardinal Tagle been stabbed in the back by his fellow cardinals? Had promises been broken behind those sacred doors? The reality, as always, was more complex than headlines suggested. There is no credible evidence that Cardinal Tagle was deliberately betrayed by his peers in the College of Cardinals. The conclave is not a political convention or a boardroom power play. It is a process steeped in prayer, discernment, and solemn responsibility. The Holy Spirit guides the conclave, explained Cardinal Christoph Schönborn of Vienna in a post-election interview. We enter that chapel not as politicians but as shepherds seeking the will of God for his church. Cardinals take an oath of absolute secrecy regarding conclave proceedings, a tradition dating back centuries. This secrecy protects the integrity of the process and shields cardinals from external pressures. It also means that definitive accounts of what happens inside the Sistine Chapel never emerge. But Vatican analysts and church historians can identify several factors that likely shaped the outcome. First, there was the matter of geographical representation. While Pope Francis had broken the European monopoly on the papacy by coming from Argentina, the leap to an Asian pope may have seemed too dramatic for some in the college. Europe still accounts for a substantial portion of the cardinal electors, and historic voting patterns suggest a tendency toward gradual, rather than revolutionary change. The cardinals were not ready to take that step, suggested Marco Politi, veteran Vatican correspondent. It's not about Cardinal Tagle personally, it's about the psychological readiness of the institution to be led by someone from outside its traditional power centers. Second, concerns about administrative experience may have played a role. While Tagle had effectively led the Archdiocese of Manila and served in the Roman Curia, some cardinals reportedly expressed private doubts about his executive management style. In an era where the Vatican faced financial scandals, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and governance challenges, these concerns carried weight. Cardinal Tagle was known more for his pastoral heart than his administrative hand. His emotional intelligence and theological depth were unquestioned, but his approach to governance, compassionate but sometimes less decisive, may have given pause to cardinals seeking a strong administrator. The Church needs both the prophet and the builder, remarked a retired Vatican official who spoke on condition of anonymity. Tagle is unquestionably a prophet, but in times of institutional crisis, many look for a builder. Third, and perhaps most significant, was the dynamic between continuity and change. Pope Francis had initiated profound reforms during his pontificate, sometimes creating tension within the hierarchy. Some cardinals believed the Church needed a period of consolidation rather than further dramatic shifts. Cardinal Provost represented a middle path, committed to Francis's vision but with a more methodical approach to implementation. As the votes were counted and alliances shifted inside the Sistine Chapel, these factors converged to elevate Cardinal Provost over his Filipino counterpart. It wasn't betrayal. It was the complex interplay of institutional dynamics, personal assessments, and prayerful discernment. For millions of Filipino Catholics, the outcome was deeply personal. The Philippines stands as the third largest Catholic nation globally, with over 80% of its 110 million citizens identifying as Roman Catholic. Faith is woven into the fabric of Filipino culture, from sprawling cathedrals to tiny barrio chapels, from elaborate Holy Week processions to daily family rosaries. Cardinal Tagle had become more than a church leader. He was a symbol of Filipino Catholic identity on the world stage. His potential elevation to the papacy represented a validation of Filipino faith, a recognition of Asian Catholicism's vibrancy, and a triumph for a nation often relegated to the margins of global attention. Maria Santos, a 63-year-old shopkeeper in Quiapo, Manila, expressed the sentiments of many. We prayed so hard. We believed it was our time, that God would give us this blessing. When Cardinal Tagle wasn't chosen, it felt like a rejection of all of us. Social media captured the emotional aftermath. Hashtags like, "Still proud of Cardinal Tagle" and "Our Pope, in our hearts" trended for days. Philippine celebrities, politicians, and business leaders issued statements of support for the Cardinal, emphasizing his continued importance to the global Church despite the conclave result. Yet amid the disappointment, there was a remarkable absence of bitterness from Cardinal Tagle himself. In his first public appearance after the conclave, at a mass in Rome's Filipino community, he displayed the same serene humility that had endeared him to millions. "God's ways are not our ways," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion visible in his eyes. "I ask you not to be discouraged or to lose faith. The Holy Spirit has guided the Church for 2,000 years, through times far more challenging than ours. Our task remains the same, to love, to serve, to proclaim the gospel with joy." His response reflected a profound spiritual maturity. There were no cryptic statements suggesting disagreement with the outcome, no insider sources revealing fury or frustration. Instead, Tagle demonstrated the very qualities that had made him Papabile in the first place: humility, faith, and unwavering commitment to the church's mission. Those who knew him well weren't surprised. Throughout his career, Tagle had consistently emphasized that ecclesiastical positions were instruments of service, not status. "It's not about the chair you sit in," he once told seminarians in Manila. "It's about the heart you bring to that chair." In the swirl of emotions surrounding Tagle's non-selection, less attention was initially paid to the man who did emerge as Pope. Cardinal Robert Francis Provost was not a household name to most Catholics before the conclave, but his selection revealed much about the church's current needs and future direction. Born in Chicago to a working-class family, his father a carpenter, his mother a schoolteacher, Provost embodied the American immigrant experience. His grandparents had come from Italy and Ireland, settling in the industrial Midwest during the early 20th century. His early formation occurred in the post-Vatican II Church, giving him a perspective balanced between tradition and renewal. After ordination, Provost surprised many by requesting missionary assignment to Peru, where he would spend 15 formative years. In Lima's sprawling barrios, he learned fluent Spanish, developed a profound understanding of Latin American Catholicism, and witnessed firsthand the church's role in addressing poverty and social injustice. His intellectual gifts eventually brought him to Rome, where he earned doctorates in canon law and systematic theology. Under Pope Benedict XV, he served in various curial positions, demonstrating administrative acumen and diplomatic skill. Pope Francis recognized these qualities, appointing him prefect of the dicastery for bishops in 2022, a position of immense influence overseeing the selection of bishops worldwide. In that role, Provost earned a reputation as a thoughtful but firm administrator. He valued pastoral experience over academic credentials in episcopal candidates, emphasized diversity in leadership appointments, and quietly implemented structural reforms to increase transparency and accountability. He wasn't flashy, noted John Allen, veteran Vatican correspondent. Provost operated largely behind the scenes, but his fingerprints are on many of the most significant Francis-era reforms. He's the kind of figure who gets things done without needing the spotlight. This combination of experiences, American roots, Latin American missionary service, Vatican administrative expertise, positioned Provost as a bridge figure in a deeply divided church. At 67, he was old enough to bring wisdom to the role, but young enough to potentially shepherd the church for 15-20 years. His selection as Pope Leo XIV signaled several priorities for the College of Cardinals. The name itself carried significance. Leo, I, 440-461 AD, was known as a defender of doctrinal clarity and church unity during turbulent times. Leo III, 1878-1903, pioneered modern Catholic social teaching with his encyclical Rerum Novarum. In choosing this name, the new pope indicated his desire to provide clear doctrinal leadership while advancing the church's engagement with social justice issues. It represented continuity with Francis's emphasis on the poor, while potentially offering more structured theological articulation. In the immediate aftermath of the conclave, speculation ran rampant about potential tension between Pope Leo XIV and Cardinal Tagle. Would there be rivalry? Resentment? Would the new pope sideline the man many had expected to be pope? Such narratives, made for compelling headlines but had little basis in reality. There is no credible evidence of any personal conflict between the two men. On the contrary, their pre-conclave relationship had been characterized by mutual respect and collaborative work on several Vatican initiatives. At Pope Leo XIV's installation mass, Cardinal Tagle was positioned prominently among the concelebrants, a visual signal of continuity and collegiality. During the traditional post-election meeting with all cardinals, observers noted the warm embrace between the new pope and the Filipino cardinal. Both men share core theological and pastoral priorities: emphasis on mercy, concern for the marginalized, commitment to evangelization, and support for environmental stewardship. Their differences are more in style than substance. Provost the methodical administrator, Tagle the charismatic communicator. They complement each other, observed Sister Natalie Becar, Undersecretary of the Synod of Bishops. The Church needs both precision and poetry, structure and spirit. In Pope Leo XIV and Cardinal Tagle, we see these qualities working in harmony. Rather than adversaries, they represent different facets of the same vision for the Church's future. Pope Leo XIV brings steady administrative leadership, while Cardinal Tagle offers prophetic inspiration and global perspective. In healthy ecclesial governance, both elements are essential. In his first apostolic exhortation, Lumen Gentium Sumus, we are the light of the world, Pope Leo XIV echoed many themes previously championed by Cardinal Tagle. The church as field, hospital, the preferential option for the poor, dialogue with other faiths. This continuity of vision suggests collaboration rather than competition between the two leaders. Far from being sidelined, Cardinal Tagle has remained central to the Church's leadership under Pope Leo XIII. Within weeks of his election, the new Pope reappointed Tagle as prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, a significant vote of confidence and an acknowledgement of his unique gifts. In this role, Cardinal Tagle continues to serve as the Vatican's point person for missionary activity worldwide. He oversees the Church's outreach in Asia, Africa, and other regions where Catholicism is growing rapidly. His office coordinates evangelization strategies, supports local churches in developing regions, and promotes enculturation of the gospel. Beyond his formal responsibilities, Tagle has emerged as a kind of goodwill ambassador for the global church. When Pope Leo XIV cannot travel to distant regions, Cardinal Tagle often goes in his place, representing the universal church while offering a personal connection to the faithful. In some ways, his influence has grown, noted Cindy Wooden of Catholic News Service. Freed from the expectations and scrutiny of being Papabile, Cardinal Tagle can focus on his pastoral gifts without the political baggage that sometimes accompanies potential papal candidates. His role has evolved into something perhaps more impactful than the papacy itself would have allowed. As a cardinal, Tagle can speak with bold prophetic voice on issues from climate change to economic justice, without the diplomatic constraints that often limit papal pronouncements. He can travel extensively, reaching communities that rarely see a papal visit. In the Philippines, initial disappointment has given way to pride in Cardinal Tagle's continued global influence. "We may not have a Filipino pope," remarked former President Benigno Aquino III, "but we have a Filipino voice that continues to shape the universal church. That is something to celebrate." Pope Leo XIV inherits a church facing profound challenges. Despite numeric growth in the global south, Catholicism continues to decline in its traditional European strongholds. Secularism advances in Western democracies, while religious persecution threatens Christian communities in parts of Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Internally, the Church remains deeply divided between progressive and traditional factions. The sex abuse crisis has eroded institutional credibility, particularly among younger generations. Financial scandals have undermined the Vatican's moral authority on economic matters, yet opportunities abound as well. The digital revolution offers new avenues for evangelization and community building. Growing environmental consciousness creates openings for the Church's ecological teachings. The search for meaning in an increasingly materialistic world makes the Church's spiritual wisdom more relevant than ever. In addressing these challenges, Pope Leo XIV has adopted a methodical, collaborative approach. He has assembled a diverse team of advisors, including Cardinal Tagle, representing various theological perspectives and global regions. His governance style emphasizes consultation, careful deliberation, and clear communication. "This pope doesn't act impulsively," observed Cardinal Blase Kupich of Chicago. "He studies issues thoroughly, listens to multiple viewpoints, and then makes decisions with clarity and conviction." It's exactly the leadership style the Church needs in this moment. Cardinal Tagle's role in this leadership team is crucial. He provides the emotional intelligence, cultural sensitivity, and communication skills that complement the Pope's analytical approach. When difficult decisions must be explained to the faithful, Tagle often serves as the Church's voice, translating complex theological positions into accessible language that resonates with ordinary Catholics. Together, Pope Leo XIII and Cardinal Tagle represent a new model of shared leadership, neither the monarchical papacy of previous centuries nor the decentralized governance some progressives advocate, but a balanced approach that preserves unity while honoring diversity. 3 months into the pontificate of Pope Leo XIII, the initial shock of Cardinal Tagle's non-election has faded. The Church has entered a period of measured reform, building on Pope Francis's foundation, while addressing implementation challenges that sometimes hindered his initiatives. For Cardinal Tagle, the conclave outcome represents not a closed door, but a different path of service. His journey continues to inspire millions worldwide, demonstrating that effective church leadership transcends titles and positions. "Perhaps this is how God intended it," reflected Archbishop Charles Cicluna of Malta. The Church now benefits from both Pope Leo's administrative wisdom and Cardinal Tagle's prophetic voice. Had either been absent from leadership, we would be diminished. The relationship between these two men offers a model for how the Church might navigate its internal divisions, with mutual respect, focus on shared mission, and willingness to learn from different perspectives. Their collaboration demonstrates that apparent opposites, East and West, emotion and reason, charisma and structure, can work in harmony. As Pope Leo XIV prepares for his first international trip, significantly to the Philippines, the symbolic significance is not lost on observers. By prioritizing Asia for his first apostolic journey, the Pope acknowledges both the continent's growing importance to Catholicism's future and his personal respect for Cardinal Tagle's homeland. The story of the 2025 Conclave and its aftermath reveals important lessons about the nature of leadership in the Catholic Church. It reminds us that human expectations often differ from divine plans, that influence flows through multiple channels, and that the Church's path forward requires both continuity and renewal. For Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, the journey continues, not in the shoes of the fisherman, but as a prince of the Church whose voice still echoes through St. Peter's and beyond. For Pope Leo XIV, the burden of leadership is shared with trusted colleagues like Tagle, making the yoke lighter through genuine collaboration. And for the 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide, the promise remains: I am with you always, until the end of the age. Whatever human hands guide the bark of Peter, this divine promise remains the Church's truest North Star. As Cardinal Tagle himself said in his first homily after the conclave, the Church doesn't belong to any cardinal or pope. It belongs to Christ. And Christ has never failed to guide his people, even through the stormiest seas. Our task is simple: to keep our eyes fixed on him, to row together in harmony, and to trust the journey wherever it leads.